The year is 1541. A chill wind howls through the Tower of London, carrying whispers of treachery and despair. The stones weep, bearing witness to centuries of royal bloodshed. In a cramped cell, a noblewoman awaits her fate. Her name is Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury. She is a Plantagenet, a daughter of the White Rose, the last of a dynasty extinguished by war. Born into privilege, Margaret's life was altered by the Wars of the Roses. This conflict between York and Lancaster tore England apart. Her father, George, Duke of Clarence, met a grim end, drowned in a vat of wine by his own brother, King Edward IV. The White Rose, symbol of her lineage, became a dangerous emblem. Margaret's heart knows another truth. Margaret was no stranger to resilience. She navigated courtly life with grace and determination. She witnessed the rise of the Tudors, a new dynasty. Henry VII sought to unite a fractured kingdom. Margaret, a symbol of the old order, represented both a threat and an opportunity. Her lineage cast a long shadow over her life. Every whisper of conspiracy seemed to find its way to her. The weight of history pressed down upon her. But Margaret was a survivor. She would endure even as the world crumbled. Margaret Pole entered the world in 1473. Her birthplace, Warwick Castle, echoed with the laughter of courtiers. As the daughter of George, Duke of Clarence, Margaret was swaddled in luxury. Her early years were a tapestry woven with threads of gold, yet shadows lurked even in this gilded cage. The War of the Roses had left its mark. Her father, a man of volatile temperament, was a source of anxiety. His loyalty wavered, his thirst for power dangerous. Margaret, even in childhood, felt the tremors of unease. She witnessed the growing distance between her father and King Edward IV. The love of her mother provided a sanctuary. But fate had other plans. In 1478, tragedy struck. Her father, accused of treason, met a grim end. He was drowned in a vat of Malmsey wine. Margaret, barely 5, found herself in a world turned upside down. The shadows of her lineage loomed large. The world faded to shades of grey. The laughter in Warwick Castle fell silent. Margaret became an orphan, a ward of the crown. Her mother shielded her as best she could. But the shadow of her father's treachery stretched long. King Edward IV viewed Margaret and her brother as potential threats. Their claim to the throne made them pawns in a dangerous game. Life at court became a precarious balancing act. Margaret learned to mask her emotions. She excelled in her studies and courtly etiquette. Her intelligence shone through, tempered with caution. She found solace in her faith. The execution of her brother Edward in 1499 served as a chilling reminder. The Tudor dynasty had taken root. Margaret, the last Plantagenet rose, clung to survival. Henry VII recognized the threat and potential value of Margaret Pole. He could not ignore her lineage. Her blood held a certain allure, a legitimacy for his throne. His solution was a marriage of convenience. In 1500, Margaret was wed to Sir Richard Pole. It was a political alliance binding her to the Tudor dynasty. Though not a love match, it proved enduring and affectionate. Their life together was one of relative obscurity. Exiled from court, they found solace in domesticity. Margaret poured her heart into raising her 5 children. She instilled in them honor, duty, and faith. But the echoes of the past reverberated. Margaret could not escape her heritage. The White Rose continued to cast a long shadow. The death of Henry VII in 1509 brought a seismic shift. The old king was replaced by his son, Henry VIII. The court erupted in color and festivity. Henry VIII embraced extravagance. For Margaret Pole, this change brought hope. She had known Henry since childhood. The young king treated Margaret with kindness and respect. He saw in her a link to a glorious past. Margaret approached this favor with hope and trepidation. She had learned that fortune's wheel could turn in an instant. Yet there was something sincere about Henry. Could she and her children finally reclaim their place? Her husband, Sir Richard Pole, encouraged her. Margaret found herself drawn into the young king's orbit. The years that followed were a whirlwind of change. Henry VIII restored her family to prominence. He returned the Countess of Salisbury title. He showered her children with favors. Margaret navigated this new world with grace. She became a trusted advisor to the king. Her intelligence made her invaluable. She took pride in her role as governess to Princess Mary. In Mary, Margaret saw a kindred spirit. She instilled in Mary values of faith, duty, and resilience. However, the shadow of the past lingered. Whispers of her Plantagenet bloodline never abated. Envious courtiers sought to poison the king's mind. Margaret knew the king's favor was a dangerous gift. A new storm began to gather. Henry VIII, obsessed with a male heir, clashed with the Catholic Church. His marriage to Catherine of Aragon became a source of turmoil. Margaret, a devout Catholic, watched with unease. She found solace in the teachings of the Church. The thought of England breaking from Rome filled her with foreboding. The execution of Sir Thomas More in 1535 sent shockwaves. More, like Margaret, refused to condone the king's actions. His death was a chilling reminder of the king's wrath. Margaret was torn between loyalty to the crown and her conscience. It was a question that would test her resolve. Despite the turmoil, Margaret found solace in her children. Her sons, Reginald, Geoffrey, and Henry, had grown into fine men. Reginald, a scholar and priest, rose to prominence in the church. Margaret's heart swelled with pride. They were a testament to her love and values. In their presence, she found peace and purpose. However, her joy was not without shadows. Reginald's criticism of Henry's break from Rome filled her with trepidation. She understood his unwavering faith, but she knew the dangers of defying the king. Her heart ached for her children. She tried to shield them from courtly intrigues, but the legacy of her Plantagenet blood cast a long shadow. The year 1536 marked a turning point. Anne Boleyn, the king's second wife, met her end on the scaffold. The charges sent shockwaves through the court. No one was safe from the king's wrath. Margaret felt a chill run down her spine. The king's ruthlessness spoke of dangerous instability. Her anxieties were fueled by the rift between Henry and her son, Reginald. Reginald, now a cardinal, criticized the king's reforms. His pamphlets denounced Henry as a tyrant. Margaret pleaded with Reginald to soften his tone. She understood his convictions, but she knew the danger he courted. Her pleas fell on deaf ears. Reginald refused to be silenced. Margaret's heart ached with fear for her son. Section 2. The Threads Unravel. The king, enraged by Reginald Pole's defiance, sought to strike back. Unable to touch the cardinal directly, he directed his fury towards those closest to him. Margaret, despite her years of loyal service, found herself under increasing suspicion. Her lineage, her Catholic faith, and her son's treasonous words formed a dangerous trifecta in the eyes of the king and his advisors. The threads of Margaret's life, so carefully woven over decades, began to unravel. In 1538, her son, Henry Pole, Lord Montague, was arrested on charges of treason. The evidence against him was flimsy, based largely on intercepted letters and the accusations of his enemies. Yet, in the climate of fear and paranoia that gripped the court, such details mattered little. Henry Pole, despite his mother's desperate pleas for clemency, was found guilty and executed. Margaret's world crumbled around her. The grief of losing a child, compounded by the injustice of his death, threatened to consume her. But even as she mourned, she knew that she and her remaining children were still in danger. The king, like a wounded animal, was lashing out, striking at anyone he perceived as a threat, real or imagined. She withdrew from court, seeking refuge in her faith in the company of her remaining children. But even within the walls of her home, she could not escape the long reach of the king's suspicion. Every knock at the door, every whispered conversation filled her with dread. The world had become a dangerous and unpredictable place, and she knew that her family was caught in the crosshairs. Section 3. The Shadow of the Scaffold. In 1540, the axe fell once more. Geoffrey Pole, Margaret's youngest son, was arrested and charged with treason. Geoffrey, weakened by illness and despair, confessed under duress. Margaret, now in her late 60s, was arrested and imprisoned in the Tower of London. The charges were absurd, a fabrication designed to eliminate the last vestiges of Plantagenet blood. The shadow of the scaffold now stretched long and dark over Margaret Pole, the last of the Plantagenets. Section 1. A Tower Imprisoned. The Tower of London, a grim sentinel overlooking the River Thames, had borne witness to centuries of royal intrigue, ambition, and despair. Its stone walls, stained with the tears of countless prisoners, held within them the echoes of whispered prayers and anguished cries. For Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, its imposing gates marked the final chapter of a life indelibly marked by both grandeur and tragedy. Confined to a cramped, damp cell, Margaret faced her imprisonment with stoicism. The stone walls could not extinguish the fire of her faith and love for her children. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The world outside faded into a distant hum. Time stretched before her, an empty canvas of memories. She found solace in prayer, her rosary beads worn smooth from constant use. The words of Scripture provided a beacon of hope in the darkness. A trial, if one could call it such, was convened. The charges against Margaret were woven from rumor, innuendo, and outright fabrication. She was accused of conspiring with her son, Cardinal Reginald Pole, to depose the king. The evidence was flimsy, a silver cloak, letters twisted to fit the narrative of treason. Margaret refuted each accusation with quiet dignity. Her pleas fell on deaf ears. The court found her guilty. The sentence was death by beheading. Margaret received the news with stoicism. Her fate rested in the hands of a king consumed by paranoia. Margaret Pole became a pawn in his deadly game. As the days dwindled towards her execution, Margaret Pole found a strange sense of peace. She made her peace with her Maker, seeking solace in Scripture. She penned a final letter to her son filled with love and pride. On May 27, 1541, Margaret Pole was led to the executioner's block. The day was unseasonably cold, as if nature mourned her passing. The execution was gruesome, but her spirit remained unbroken. With her death, the last vestiges of the Plantagenet line were extinguished. Her legacy, intertwined with the Tower of London, serves as a testament to her courage and grace. The news of Margaret Pole's execution sent shockwaves through England and beyond. Her senseless death sparked outrage and disbelief. Foreign ambassadors were appalled by Henry VIII's actions. Their dispatches painted a picture of a realm teetering on chaos. Within England, a sense of unease settled over the land. The common folk recognized the injustice of Margaret's fate. She had lived a life of service and devotion. A sense of foreboding permeated the air. Years later, Mary sought justice for her godmother. Margaret Pole was posthumously pardoned. It was a symbolic gesture to right a wrong. Margaret Pole's story, however, transcends the realm of political intrigue and royal retribution. It stands as a testament to the enduring power of faith, family, and the indomitable spirit of a woman who refused to be broken by the storms that raged around her. She navigated the treacherous currents of Tudor politics with grace and intelligence, her loyalty to the crown never overshadowing her deep-seated belief in God's will and the sanctity of her own conscience. She was a woman of unwavering principles, a devout Catholic who found solace and strength in her faith, even as the world around her seemed to crumble. She was a loving mother, her heart breaking with each loss, yet her spirit remaining unbroken. Her love for her children, a beacon of light in the darkest of times. And she was a Plantagenet, the last of a dynasty that had ruled England for centuries, her bloodline a reminder of a past both glorious and tumultuous. Her execution, far from silencing her voice, amplified it across the centuries. She became a symbol of resistance against tyranny, a martyr for her faith, and an enduring icon of courage and dignity in the face of unimaginable adversity. Her story, passed down through generations, continues to inspire awe and admiration, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit, fortified by faith and love, can endure. Today, the Tower of London, once a place of fear and dread, stands as a testament to England's rich and often turbulent history. Within its walls, the echoes of countless lives intertwine: kings and queens, heroes and villains, those who wielded power, and those who were crushed beneath its weight. Among these echoes, the story of Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, resonates with a particular poignancy. Her memory is kept alive not only within the tower's imposing walls, but also in the countless books, plays, and films that have sought to capture the drama and tragedy of her life. She has become a muse for historians and artists alike, her story a reminder of the enduring power of the past to captivate and inspire. In an age often defined by its cynicism and its skepticism towards grand narratives, Margaret Pole's story stands as a powerful counterpoint. It reminds us that even in the most trying of circumstances, principles matter, faith can endure, and love can transcend the boundaries of time and mortality. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below.